First things first, welcome to the Buff Production Garage, where all the magic happens. We're going to be talking about high horsepower in this video. If you want to watch the General Zod videos, volume 1 and 2, they're online. Just please like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see future videos. But welcome to my page, and here we go. Purpose of this video is basically I'm tired of the Subaru engine getting a bad rep, the EJ engine in particular, due to the owners. So I'm making this video just to give you guys some insight. I've owned a Subaru since 2002. Never had one to fail on me. This one here has 687 horsepower. This video is mainly to make sure you guys are doing what you need to do to keep your engines running. Also, later in the video, if you are planning on a high horsepower build, I'm going to give you some steps to maybe help you out. Trying to give you some advice. I've been there, done that. Let's start by the first thing you should do is never mod one of these cars without tuning. I don't care if it's an intake, an exhaust. If you add a mod to this car, you need to make sure that the air-fuel ratios and the tune is correct, because the last thing you want to do is lean the engine out. You're done. I mean, it doesn't take long. The engine will fail. So all you guys that like to slap these mods on there and think everything's going to be hunky-dory, that's just not the case. So make sure you get the correct tune in the car for the mods you're running. Another thing is when you do add a mod on the car, you may need another mod to compensate the mod that you added. The next thing I want to go over is maintenance. I see it all the time. People go out and race their car all the time, and they don't want to put some oil in the car. By all means, if you daily drive the car, you don't have to keep an eye on it as bad, but if you're going out here and racing every night, you may want to do more maintenance than the guy that's just daily driving the car. I mean, it's common sense. Stuff like that, checking your oil. If you're racing the car a lot, you might want to check the oil every time you go out, just to make sure there's enough in there. I don't know how many people that's come to me with a blown engine because they ran it out of oil. I'll check the dipstick and it'll be 3 quarts in there. I mean, it's just dumb. I mean, it's your investment. You can daily drive the car, but like I said, if you're racing it a lot, you may want to do more maintenance than the guy that's not just daily driving. So just keep an eye on your oil levels at all times. I can't stress enough, before you do any modifications to the car, I always recommend gauges. A simple air-fuel ratio gauge and an oil pressure gauge goes a long way on these cars. You want to make sure there's always oil pressure in there. If you run low oil, it's done. Air-fuel ratios just let you keep an eye on the car a lot better than without one. I mean, don't ever depend on that oil pressure light to flash on. By then, it's done. I mean, gauges go a long way. Like I said, I would do gauges before I did any modifications to the car, just so you know what's going on in the engine. EJ engine's been around a while. There are known issues. And I would take care of the known issues before I even touched any modifications to the car, such as the oil pickup tube. That's a known issue. Get that thing out of there as soon as you can. All it does is, I mean, if that thing cracks, it cannot get it. It's going to starve the engine of oil. So let's get the oil pickup out of there as soon as you can. That's like one of the first things you should do. It's just a known problem with the car. And if you know any other known issues with the car, by all means, replace those before you do any kind of power modifications. I mean, the main thing you want is your car to continue running, and it can't do that without oil. So, I can't stress this enough. High quality parts. If the parts you're putting on the car, such as an eBay part, if it's not better than the stock part, don't put it on. And I hear this all the time, oh, I can't afford this or that, I can't afford. Leave the stock parts on the car if you can't afford something better than the stock part. For you guys that plan on getting into the higher horsepower builds, or even planning on building your engine or any kind of stuff like that, I'm going to give you a list of things you should do before you even attempt to start the engine. I'm going to give you a checklist. Just make sure you follow the checklist step by step. Let's make sure we do that on a first engine startup. The last thing you want to do is do an engine build and then starve the engine of oil or something stupid, not have correct oil pressure before you try to start the engine, and it just scratches all your cylinder walls up. That's the last thing you want to do. You want to make sure that oil pressure is up before you even attempt to start the car. So I'm going to give you a checklist of the car on a first time startup, just so we don't do all this kind of work to an engine and then blow it up for something stupid. So just follow the checklist that I provide on the screen there. Now, for you guys that plan on doing any kind of engine building or raising your power up, I mean, this car here's got 687 horsepower, but by all means that's not turned all the way up, and I'm not going to display the final numbers in any video. But the car put down 687 on the 5th setting, and there's more settings past that, but let's not go there. But for you guys that plan on doing a build in the future, I want to pass some knowledge that I've gained over the years onto you, just so you might not make mistakes or whatever. The very first thing, of course, is fortifying the block. You want that thing as strong as you can. I don't care how you do it. I mean, depending on your horsepower level, I mean, you may want to do one thing or the other. I mean, there's many options out there: closed deck block, sleeving the block. There's many things that you can do to fortify the block, and anything over 350 horsepower, let's go ahead and assume you're going to need a block, or you're just testing the limits of the engine. For sure, that's like the no-brainer. That's like the first thing you want to do is get those pistons, the cast pistons, out of there and fortify the block anyhow you can, depending on the power level you're going to be running. After you get the new block in, as I said, depending on how much power you're going to be running, even the minor builds are going to need some fuel system upgrades, injectors, regulator, fuel pump. Those are some of the first things you need to do. I mean, you can't start adding all this air with a bigger turbo and not upgrade the fuel. Another one of the things that Subaru did to us is series the fuel rails in a series configuration. Let's go ahead and get those paralleled. And of course, when you choose the turbo type, I mean, you're going to have to determine which turbo you're going to go with for how much power you're going to be running. You don't want to go too big if you're going to be doing certain kind of races. But like I said, depending on your power level, that's going to be your call on the turbo size. Now, what I will stress is the bigger you go, the more lag you're going to have, so that you're going to have to do things that need to counter that lag, such as I've got a full race twin scroll setup. Anything that you can do to that big turbo to make it spool better, I definitely recommend doing it. Ball bearing, twin scroll, 400 horsepower mark, you're going to convert to E85. Now you're going to be putting 30% more fuel into the car, so you're going to need some bigger injectors to run that fuel. But you don't want to be pushing over 500 horsepower on pump gas on this car. It's just not smart to do that. If you want to have the flex fuel sensor and run both the fuels, just have the gas map on a low setting, just for daily driving or whatever you want to do. But anything over 400 horsepower, let's get the E85 in the car. As we go up in horsepower, I mean, that stock head it's going to be limited somewhere in the 500, right at 500 horsepower. So if you plan to have more than 500 horsepower, let's go ahead and get cams in the car, just to get more air in the engine. The stock head it's only going to give you so much power. So after 500 horsepower, let's get you some cams in the car. That would be the next move. And if you get up to the 550 horsepower range, let's go ahead and build the head, get some valves, polish the head. let's do the head work. And that's for the guys that they're planning on getting more than 550 out of the car. That would be the next move. You're only going to fit so big of a turbo in that stock location, so for the guys that are planning on going north of 550, you may want to look into a rotated kit. Full races on this car, and I highly recommend full race. You get your money's worth with the full race kit. Now this is for the guys that are planning on to go 600 horsepower north. You can't let the engine get starved of fuel pressure. I can't stress that enough for the higher horsepower cars. It only takes one pull of going lean and your engine's finished. So I recommend definitely adding a surge tank past 600 horsepower. Can you run without a surge tank? Yes. Would I recommend it? No, because a little bit of insurance goes a long way with, starving your engine of fuel pressure is the last thing you want to do when you're doing a pull. I added a surge tank so I could get 2 twin Bosch 044s in the surge tank sucking the fuel. The pumps being in parallel, feeding with a dash 8 line to the rails. Can you run the stock line? Yes. I don't recommend it. Just do it. Like I said, you would rather have it there and not need it versus the opposite, and that's what I chose to do. This car hit 687 on the dyno, and I was starving right there at the limit of the fuel pressure setup, and it just started leaning out, so we had to stop. And of course the surge tank's been added and our fuel pressure's stable now, but I can't stress that enough. After 600 horsepower, just add the surge tank. It's extra insurance. You can get the pumps in parallel. You got all the pressure you need there once you add the 8 line, and you just get rid of anything that could go wrong, honestly. Now once you get all the parts that you got on the car, selecting a tuner is going to be your choice. That's going to be like one of the most important things, getting the correct tune in the car, getting the air-fuel ratios, and of course you're going to have all the gauges and you're going to see what's going on in the engine. Of course, the more power you got, the more gauges I'd always recommend. I don't know how many times the fuel pressure gauge has saved my engine, especially with the setup that I used to have. I could see exactly what was going on. Air-fuel ratio gauges saved my car numerous times. Can see it. The more you know about your engine, what's going on in it, the quicker you're going to find a fault. For sure. Oil pressure gauge, I can't stress enough gauges. Like, those are the first things that you need to do before even touching anything on the engine. But that just about wraps it up. Like I said, I'm making this video because I'm really truly sick of these people blaming the Subaru engine when it's the driver's fault or when it's the owner's fault. Hopefully this video is going to help you guys out. Realize, protect your investment. And if you do plan to do a high horsepower build, hopefully this video helps you. And feel free to leave any comments that you want in the comment section there, and I'll get them answered for you. But that about wraps it up here. Thank you for watching.